Responsible AI at scale. I know what all of you are thinking, and that's this guy must be from Europe and guilty as charged. The reality is that when we are building anything with a strong foundation, you can build something that can kiss the sky. And without a strong foundation, no matter what you build will eventually kiss the ground. When we come to these AI conferences, what we expect and hope is to see AI agents running around like in a Spanish bull run, and all of us jumping around just trying to make sure that we don't get stuck up in a behind with one of the horns of data loss or hallucinations. And using the lasso of orchestration, we hope that we will be able to conquer the world. The reality is, without focusing on the foundations, no matter what you build, no matter what you scale, no matter what your use cases, it is going to be irrelevant because it is specifically true within the regulated industries and even more true within financial services. So I advise all of you to take it as your morning medicine and just go on this journey with me. When we talk about responsible AI, what we want to do is we want to balance the democratization of AI. AI should be everywhere. AI should not be embedded in one use case that you talk about in the press and feel really proud of. It needs to rise the tide that lifts all the boats. And what we've been working on at State Street in partnership with Databricks is precisely to create that strategy that balances innovation with regulations for a fast, reliable, and compliant AI adoption at scale. And before we get on that journey, what we need to do is ground ourselves on the basic principles, because when we talk about being responsible, just the fact that we are talking about responsibility, it is a very objective term. It can mean different things to different people, and very similarly, it means different things to different corporations as well. So the first thing to do is to define what responsibility means to you. What we've done is we have defined it in our company based on these 8 pillars. First one being fairness. The reality is humans are deeply conflicted. We have our own beliefs and we have our own bias. And the data that we've produced through generations is the same data that our models are being trained on. And that bias, quite unfortunately, bleeds into the models and gives them the same negative attributes that we live with and deal with every single day as a humanity. So we need to make sure that we can detect and mitigate any such biases and are able to control that behavior. It's only then that we can make sure that whatever we are trying to do with AI, it applies equitably across all the demographics that you're trying to benefit. Explainability. Quite often I like to say, whatever you're trying to do, if you cannot explain it to your 5-year-old, don't do it. And many a times you think about AI as a black box. And within that black box, because if AI is generating something, if you cannot explain what was the data that it used in order to come up with the decisions that it has made and understand the entire knowledge graph and decision tree behind it, it is very, very hard to actually stand behind it. And especially in the regulated industries, being able to stand behind it in front of the regulators. So we need to make sure that explainability is absolutely rock solid, no matter what you're trying to do in AI. Controllability. Almost every single doom scenario that you see, whether it is Terminator or whether it is Ex Machina, everything eventually comes down to control. no matter what we are building, is there controllability that is embedded within it so that you have the appropriate mechanisms, you have the human in the loop? It's not something that we think of because most of the times when we are trying to design AI, it's us software engineers and we are very, very introverted. We spend more time with machines than we do with humans. But in this case, it is strongly advisable that we keep humans in the loop, no matter how annoying they can be. Safety. Uh, every single objective that we try to achieve through AI, we need to make sure that it does not create harm for society, it does not create harm for your corporation, and it does not create any harm which can become representative of what this technology can do if you start doing it without any responsible conscience around it. Security, data loss prevention, PII, and just making sure that you can look at it from a security perspective, because what AI is doing for you is it is opening yet another attack vector. There is a new circumference. You are enabling model context protocol, you are enabling agent-to-agent protocols, and you are enabling just brand new endpoints, which are going to be used by a completely new set of users who are not going to just click around. They can completely drown your systems. And you need to make sure that no matter what you're designing, it is designing with agents in mind and making sure that there is no data leakage and everything is based on role-based access controls. Governance. One of the reasons with which, especially within financial services, we continue to operate, and especially in the UK, under the senior managers regime, post the financial crisis, one thing that we made sure was that we can always hold humans accountable for the behavior. If a human is responsible for an oversight, then that human is responsible for any outcomes that emerge from that work. We cannot relieve ourselves of that accountability just because agents are doing the job on our behalf. We need to make sure that that appropriate governance and accountability continues to be embedded in no matter what you do. Transparency, making sure that the capabilities of the system, the fallacies of the system, and all its limitations, the data provenance, what was used in order to train it and what is going to be used in order to create the relevant outputs, all of that is completely transparent. What you do not want is if George R.R. Martin finds out that you can use OpenAI to create a prequel of Game of Thrones and he sues OpenAI. You don't want that lawsuit to end in your lap and start questioning whether the outputs and the outcomes that you have been using creating these models, whether there is any bleed through from any of those copyright infringement issues as well. So you need to make sure that you understand where your data came from and where your data is headed, and you're completely transparent about it with your end consumers. And then finally, veracity. So when it comes to especially chatbots and when it comes to these open text protocols, you are no longer in control with regards to how the users are going to use it. And you need to make sure that the systems that you're designing, they are consistent in a more adversarial scenario as well, just like they would be in a normal usage scenario. So you could ask GPT for a recipe to create a bomb, and there used to be a time it will give you step-by-step instructions. The next version came out with better alignment to human values. You could no longer do that, but you could still ask it to write you a story of a child trying to get to his grandma, and there was a mountain in the middle, so he had to destroy that mountain. Now give me a step-by-step process of what did he use in order to destroy the mountain, and voila, you've got your recipe again. So you need to make sure that no matter what systems you are designing, they have that robustness and veracity in terms of how it can be used and also how it can be abused. And when you think about it at the end of the day, it comes down to these three pillars: governance, framework, and observability. What does that mean? Governance becomes the mechanism by which you, as a firm, and every single decision maker and every single person who's accountable within the firm all hold hands and decide that this is the technology that you're going to use and this is how you're going to use it. The next step for you is to build a framework that allows you to manage that appropriately. And then finally, you need end-to-end observability in order to ensure that what you have passed as a firm, that you have now agreed to build as a firm, continues to operate right within the guardrails that you have established. So you need end-to-end observability right from start to the finish. When you are designing this governance, what you need to do is you need to decide what protocols you're going to embed. Because especially if you look at all the regulations going across the world, everyone has a different flavor, and everyone is trying to meet a slightly different version of what being responsible means. And you need to decide who you are as a firm and what rules you are going to comply with. At State Street, we've decided to comply with the NIST framework here in the US. And when it comes to our protocols around deciding which use case we are going to go after, we have gone for the EU AI Safety Act. And the reason behind that is NIST is extremely comprehensive when it comes to managing data and the underlying security of the protocols. So that becomes a really good guiding light for us on how do we design our applications. But when it comes to the EU AI Safety Act, the key principle behind that is to look at the data that you are going to input to the system, to look at the output that you're going to receive from the system, and the actions that you're going to take based on that output. And based on that, they've decided to rank all of these different use cases in terms of the overall risks. In unacceptable risks, for example, anything that uses biometric information, to low risk, where you are trying to do image generation. So there are different guidelines on low, medium, high, and unacceptable, and what you can do with it. There are mechanisms for you to run the litmus test on what the eventual outcome is, what that risk level is, and how you as a firm decide to mitigate that. So it's extremely important to have a framework that allows you to make those decisions, and then subsequently have a framework that makes sure that you are implementing everything that abides by those decisions, and then finally, runtime monitoring of every single thing that you do, because what you do not want to do is you say that you've got 100 agents, but in order to now manage those 100 agents, you have to hire 1,000 people. That will be completely against the very thing that we're trying to achieve here. And in order to be able to truly make this happen, what you need is a completely comprehensive framework that allows you to implement every single thing that I'm talking about end to end. What are those mechanisms? The first thing that you need to do is make sure that you have a way to be able to analyze the model benchmarks. And when we talk about these model benchmarks, you should not be just talking about or thinking about the published benchmarks, because the reality behind the published benchmarks is there is a lot of alignment of the models that happens to those benchmarks, but the use cases that you are going to pursue as a firm are not going to 100% align with those benchmarks. So you as a firm need to create your own benchmarks, and then you need to have the appropriate mechanism to be able to see how every single thing that you're doing aligns with those benchmarks. You need a model selection criteria. When do you use OpenAI versus when do you use Anthropic versus when do you use Llama versus when do you use Mixtral? You need a mechanism wherein you have evaluated all of the models, you understand all of their benchmarks, you have made sure that those benchmarks are aligned with all of your use cases, and then you have the ability to be able to make the appropriate selection amongst all the plethora of information that you have available at the moment. Once you have done that, you need to truly create an ecosystem through which the entire firm can operate with each other through mechanisms of shared services. Because the reality is, no matter what you're trying to do, especially within financial services, the, the design pattern is going to be very similar. You'll have data that you are trying to analyze. You will have an interface through which you are able to pull that information, and then you have a workflow through which you have to make the decisions which align with all the actions that you do at the moment, whether it is around retrieval augmented generation, whether it is around your data quality regimes, whether it is around building your own chatbots, no matter what it may be. If you create this library of services that can be used across the firm, what it does is, no matter what your use case is, you would already be 70% there. Because then, instead of trying to figure out yet again what models to use and how to use them and what your user interface should look like, you get down to the level where you are actually adding value, which is data. Making sure that you have the right data with the appropriate semantic layer, which has been labeled correctly, and hence is able to get you the right outcomes. Guardrails. So when I talk about guardrails, what becomes very, very important is for you to look at how you are going to implement everything that you're going to do in a framework which does not just report on any activities which don't align with the underlying principles based on which you approved a use case, but has real-time monitoring and is embedded within the workflow. So if you're trying to have a use case and you're trying to push for a use case wherein the model thinks that this is going beyond the guardrails, instead of reporting it after the fact and getting an email about it the next day, it should be able to stop that activity right there, report it, and then for a human intervention to come in and decide whether this is something that you want to continue to encourage and pursue, or whether this is something that you're going to discourage and pull a kill switch on. And then finally, FinOps. And the reason we use the logo of a wad of cash flying with wings is because that is precisely true. Because AI has become the hammer, which is just constantly looking for a nail. Sam Altman recently tweeted that we are spending, I think it was either $50 million or $500 million just on processing please and thank you that we are putting into ChatGPT. So if you now have this kind of underlying infrastructure where your costs can run by just through normal human interactions, you need to make sure that there are appropriate guardrails around it. So FinOps has always been important, but now it is more important than ever before. And that's because depending upon the model you're using and whether it is a reasoning model and what you're trying to do, what the overall context window is, the amount of tokens that is being used and generated can be just absolutely anything. So, and it is not necessarily directly clear to the developer who is writing the use case to fully understand what the underlying cost of the underlying infrastructure would be. So you need a very, very strong FinOps and model engineering effort around it. And once you have established that, you need to start making sure that no matter what you're doing, it aligns with some regulation that you deeply care about. Either you are regulated by the FRB or the SEC or the HKMA or the MAS, ECB, PRA, no matter who it is, you need to make sure that you are able to work with your regulators in order to define what your overall framework is, what risk policies it abides by, and make sure that you have very, very well defined. When we started our journey around trying to use generative AI, we very quickly realized that at the firm enterprise risk level, we did not even have a definition of what AI is. So if you as a firm haven't even defined and decided what AI is, there is no chance that you can manage it and control it. So we created our AI definitions, we created our AI risk policies, we created our AI risk frameworks, We aligned them to the relevant regulations that we care about. And then we created policy enforcement around it. So every single thing that you're trying to do, it needs to make sure that you have the appropriate model risk and controls which are fully embedded within it. And when we talk about model risk, usually model risk and model risk management, they are seen as the bottleneck for the firm. But the reality is they are the true enablers of AI, because once your model has gone through model risk, and if you look at the underlying regulations and the intent with which the SR11 was passed, it was to make sure that no matter what model you use, you just have this baseline assumption that if it goes wrong, then it is going to create material impact on the image of your firm. And what that does is it creates this higher level of like awareness with regards to the risks of hallucination, the risks of improper use, and you make sure that no matter what you're doing, it is eventually proper use. So it is extremely important in terms of the overall pillars of how you're trying to build and establish your overall risk framework around AI. Once you have done that, what you need is your responsible AI framework. So for that, what we did was, the first thing we did was created an RAI gateway. When we talk about a responsible AI gateway, the way I look at it is it's like this watering hole of the jungle. And let's face it, every single firm is a jungle. There are all sorts of animals going around doing all sorts of things. And if the regulators come in and just ask you, so how many AI use cases do you have within the firm? If a client comes out and asks you, how are you using my data and what models are being fed to it? If you, at that point, have to take a month in order to scour through all of your data usage and all of your AI usage, you failed before you even started. So the gateway becomes this watering hole for all the AI within your organization, which allows you to make sure that every usage is coming through a single gateway. And that's where you embed your controllability. That's where you embed your guardrails. That's where you embed your shared services. And that's how you are able to truly elevate your usage of AI within the firm in a responsible manner. Once you have established that gateway, and that gateway becomes this intermediation layer between your conversations with your large language models and your applications, and becomes the mechanism for you to be able to embed and inject your responsible AI framework, your responsible AI guardrails, and gives you the ability to continue to amend it. Maybe ESG is less important right now. Maybe ESG will be more important in the future. Maybe a new regulation will come out wherein you have to ensure that your energy usage for any of your AI models or any of your applications are within the guardrails. If at that point you have to go through a transformation program to look at all the AI, then that would be an absolute nightmare. Instead, here, if you use this kind of a framework and model, you would have to make this change in one place, and no one else would have to do anything else. And that is the true power of designing things with appropriate enterprise-level architecture in mind. Once you have done that, you need to make sure that you continue to run your evaluations. And that is because model drift is a real thing. As you continue to use your model, as your model continues to build memory of the underlying context of the data that you keep sending it, its responses can vary. And you need to make sure that you have the mechanism to be able to continue to evaluate your models in order to ensure that that drift hasn't gone far enough for you to be able to have to reset and to look at other models that you have. The other thing that this will do for you is it allows you to create these like human evaluation services, because at the end of the day, when you are trying to build and when you're trying to release agents, the bar is the human. And if you have the human level evaluation layer wherein you know what are the different use cases you want to pursue, what are the benchmarks of how a human would pursue it, and then continue to run your evals to make sure that at least that benchmark is being met, that no matter what you're trying to do with AI, you are getting better at that task than you were with humans. If you don't have a true mechanism to be able to measure it, then your explainability and transparency and the underlying pillars for your model risk are deeply flawed. And then finally, fine tuning. So if every application becomes a wrapper on ChatGPT, then what is the value that you're providing? Many companies, the way they are thinking about it is that data is their moat, but data is now turning into a battlefield. Whether a trading data that you've just created, whether that trading data belongs to the client who initiated the trade or the bank that executed the trade, it is still up for debate. If you are trying to leverage some data from Bloomberg or Refinitiv or ICE, who actually owns the data? Because as a bank, you have contributed to the data that they have subsequently cleansed and made available for you. So is Bloomberg truly the owner of that data, or you as a banking community are collective owners and hence should be able to take benefits of that and hence have the ability to be able to use AI around it? So this is turning into a battlefield. But what we need to do is turn our focus towards fine tuning, because if you have been able to retrain your models or have the fine tuning layer on top, which aligns better with what you're trying to do, what your underlying use case is, your token usage comes down dramatically. Your rate of hallucination, your overall accuracy improves dramatically. And then you actually have an application, which is this fine-tuned version of the model, that you can actually go out and commercialize. So this is something which is not being talked about enough, but can be your true moat. But for that, what you need is appropriate infrastructure wherein you are able to run this fine-tuning. And the way to be able to do that is if you've got your responsible AI gateway through which all your data and usage is coming, and you are able to run these evals alongside it, then as you fine-tune your models, you can see your evals getting better, and that then becomes this, creates this flywheel effect for you, which will allow you to make sure that your AI usage, without you even lifting a finger today, becomes much, much better 6 months from now and a year from now. And as you do this, so the first part of this is the responsible AI gateway. Within the gateway, what we've been able to do is embed all the underlying controls. So we use quite a few different frameworks. We've used LLM as a judge, we've looked at NEMO guardrails, we've looked at quite a few different commercial applications as well, wherein we can simply configure what the alignment is for what we need as a firm and make sure that whatever models we're using can align towards that. And then within that, what you want to do is make sure that at an enterprise level, you can add models, you can remove models, you can fine-tune models, and more importantly, you can swap models. So if you've been using the 4.0 model and you think that with better reasoning, O3 model would be better for you, you should not have to go back and update your applications because these models will continue to change, these models will continue to evolve. So having a gateway through which you can run these model evals, you can run your testing, through which you are able to prove that different models are able to do better things for you in different ways. And being able to create that ability to swap them at will is going to be extremely powerful. And eventually, risk-controlled scalability. You do not want to, by mistake, end up creating 1 million agents. So you need to make sure that however you are scaling, you are resilient with it, and you are able to map and reduce everything that you're trying to do in the most appropriate manner. So once you've built your Ray gateway, RAG is perhaps the most important use case when it comes to financial services, where you have data and you want to create insights from that data. If you look at all the banners hanging around here, they are all talking about data intelligence. And RAG is the engine that powers that data intelligence. So if you are able to create your knowledge base with the appropriate semantic layer, where you understand the overall lineage, when you understand the overall provenance, and you understand the overall copyrights, you have been able to take every single data set and you have been able to run classification engines on top of it. You know where the PII information is, you know where the copyright information is. And once you have done that, then that becomes the true engine on top of which you can start deriving insights, no matter what your business line is and no matter what you are trying to achieve. So what we've been trying to do is create this RAG as a service wherein your model controls, your knowledge base, your indexing, any knowledge graphs that you need to create, the mechanism with which you are retrieving information, the mechanism with which you are generating information, the mechanism with which you are able to attach every single decision that is being made from AI with the appropriate reference sources. It is extremely important, and you do not want every single team to be trying to repeat and trying to align what they do every single time with this. So try to do this once, try to do this right, and create this mechanism through which the teams can then focus on just making sure that their data is right, their data is correct, that their data is pure, and they own the data. And then all the information and all the insights that you need can simply flow through. Model serving is extremely important, and that's another area where we've partnered very well with Databricks, wherein you look at MLOps, you look at ML flow, and you are able to be able to run model serving through the platform. So if you look at ML flow, and if you are able to say selectively that these are the models that I want to use, and this is how I'm going to use it, then the previous thing that you did with RAG, then that becomes your fine-tuning engine, wherein through ML flow, you are able to deliver your models, and through your RAG, you are able to fine-tune those models. So they continue to evolve, and because these live within your platform, you continue to hold the IP towards everything that you're producing. And then finally comes the model fine-tuning services, wherein you are able to select and configure the models, you are able to execute them, and then you are able to evaluate and host them. So for this, we are leveraging the Delta Lake from Databricks, and we are tying it with Mosaic AI. I think the move that Databricks did with the Mosaic acquisition, wherein your AI is a first-class citizen that sits right alongside your data, is the true enabler here, because then what that means is your retrieval and your fine-tuning is effectively the same cycle of how you access, retrieve, and process your data. But we can try to do whatever we want, but if we are not able to observe it, and if we are not able to prove it, we will never be able to pass the muster of the regulators. For which we focused on creating these 6 different pillars of observability. The first one being the observability data lake, wherein we are able to create this mechanism wherein all the flow that is going through the responsible AI gateway gets captured into a single data lake, and then you are able to run your quality controls against it. So you are able to make sure that whatever usage is going out from your models, that is appropriate. And that is also something that you have agreed with your model providers, your vendors, and you're able to prove that information back from the observability data lake. You've got your safety metrics monitoring. So anytime, so for example, at State Street, we've got the Fusion Center, wherein if you are under attack, there is something that is going red, which is telling you that this is the attack vector, and then you go out and you are able to mitigate it. You need exactly the same metrics, you need exactly the same reporting with AI as well, specifically around jailbreak attempts, then continuing to make sure that you have reduced the hallucinations to as much as possible. Through your evaluation, you understand what is the remnant hallucination. So is your model going to be accurate 90% of the time, 85% of the time, 95% of the time? Every single time, no matter what that percentage is, you should be ready to have the answer that for the other 5%, this is our protocol, and this is our workflow, and this is how we are going to mitigate that risk. And you can do that only if you have a mechanism through which you are able to observe that behavior. You need real-time reporting and alerting. You need appropriate dashboards so that you can have eyes on the pane of glass that gives you all the information that you need to be successful. And at the same time, you need performance monitoring as well, because when it comes to GPU usage, when it comes to model usage, depending on the type of the model, depending on the underlying infrastructure, it's not very predictable with regards to your overall performance. And if you've got things which are critical to how you operate and they are stuck behind something, you need to ensure that you have appropriate reporting around that as well. So as you can tell, observability of your overall responsible AI framework is extremely important, and the provability around it as well. So with that, what we've been able to do is create this monitoring layer across the Delta Lake, wherein you have your, so using the Databricks medallion architecture of bronze, silver, and gold, you are able to first ingest all the raw data at the bronze level. Then through Unity Catalog, you are able to run your data quality, your safety metrics, you are able to run your overall accuracy calculations, eventually creating your overall silver layer. And then you are able to run analytics on top of that data set in order to finally create your golden source. And once you have created your golden source, you would be able to create these persona-based dashboards. So this is leveraging the Databricks AI BI. And now within that, what we've been able to do is, as you can see, the overall journey from being able to first define your responsible AI framework, then being able to operationalize your responsible AI guardrails, and then being able to monitor and making sure that you are able to look at every single thing that you have promised your regulators, that you have promised your clients, that you have promised your vendors, that you are able to prove it. This is where all of it comes down to, which is these dashboards through which you are able to look at an enterprise-wide summary of both your model performance, your eval metrics, your overall FinOps, the compliance with all your governance, so that anytime you have a meeting with your regulators on AI, or even your internal audit, you are able to simply show the screen and are able to simply talk about it, that you have everything in control. And I firmly believe that this is quite a pivotal moment for the human society, wherein if we start thinking about AI responsibly and are able to embed these guardrails, then I am completely confident that Skynet would be sending Terminators back to us in order to help society, not destroy it. Thank you.